Welcome to Babblecom 5. This is episode 1 of season 2 of Babylon 5, Points of Departure. If you've just arrived from the transfer point off Io, welcome. Some people skip season 1 of Babylon 5 in its entirety because they hear that it only gets good in season 2 onwards. Let me put it this way. Things get noisier in season 2, yes, but season 1 set up all of the background you needed to make sure you got a running start at the 5-year arc going into season 2. So you now have 3 options. Go and watch season 1, go and watch the Babblecom 5 playlist for season 1, or keep listening as I give you a whistle-stop recap of the first season. In the year 2258, Earth is in command of the last of the Babylon stations, Babylon 5, aiming to settle differences between the dominant alien species in the area. We discover that the planet the station is in orbit of has an alien installation of impressive strength deep underground, and that the previous Babylon station is travelling in time. By the end of the season, peace is decidedly not achieved, and the Earth Alliance president has been killed due to a plot uncovered by Garibaldi, the station's security chief, who is now in a coma, having been betrayed by his aide who was in on the plot. The Babylon stations were built to try and prevent another war like the one with the Minbari that nearly resulted in the genocide of humanity. We learn that the commander of the station, Sinclair, was taken aboard a Minbari cruiser during the final battle, and that as a result the Minbari surrendered for unknown reasons. Now the Minbari are keeping a close eye on him, but their ambassador Delenn has entered into a chrysalis to change into something. 2 other major factions are the Narn and Centauri. Initially in season 1, the Narn are the aggressors, seeking revenge having driven the Centauri off their homeworld. They sell weapons to those who can pay to fund their own war machine. However, Ambassador Jakar leaves the station at the end of season 1, following a mysterious attack on a Narn outpost that, unbeknownst to him, was initiated by the Centauri ambassador Londo, with the help of mysterious and very powerful new allies that have fallen into his lap. There is also another enigmatic ambassador, Kosh of the Vorlons, whose true form we have yet to see as he moves about inside an encounter suit. We are also introduced to telepaths, Talia Winters being the resident commercial one on the station working for Psycor, the League of Non-Aligned Worlds, and various other alien races as well as various Earth factions who seem to be engaged in power plays back home. The conclusion of season 1 left many questions unanswered, and I'll continue now in my previous fashion, giving a synopsis of the episode and then reacting to it, assuming only knowledge of the episodes that have come before it in order to avoid the dreaded spoiler. With the arrival of the show on HBO Max, my weekly release timetable may seem slow, but not everyone everywhere will have it available, and this is a rate I hope I can keep regular despite currently being surrounded by packing boxes. So all that said, let's begin season 2 with Points of Departure. We are immediately treated to the first shot of the Agamemnon, an Earth Force Omega-class destroyer capable of creating a degree of centrifugal gravity by continuously spinning a section of its hull. This is the biggest human capital ship we've seen to date, with the possible exception of Earth Force 1, but this is clearly a combat vessel, not a presidential transport. We're introduced to Captain John Sheridan, who reassures the departing civilian vessel that they'll be back in a month to ward off hijackers. The ship is immediately shown to be capable of opening its own jump point into hyperspace, as most races' capital ships can. General Haig calls for the captain on Gold Channel 1, warning of a Minbari war cruiser seen in Earth-controlled space. It appears to be 2 jumps out from Babylon 5 and is a renegade ship, the Trigadi. The Minbari are sending another cruiser to assist, despite there having been no attacks, but hostile intent is assumed. Sheridan is established as having taken on and beaten a Minbari cruiser before, which has been considered nigh on impossible to this point, which is why Haig is confident with his involvement now. Sheridan assumes it is to take the Agamemnon to Babylon 5 and coordinate with them, but Haig says he has one more thing for him to do. On the station, it's 8 days since Santiago's death, who was the previous president, and 5 days since Commander Sinclair, who was previously in charge of the station, was recalled to Earth. So Lieutenant Commander Ivanova has a lot on her plate. Having remonstrated with some League ambassadors, she notes Garibaldi is still critical and Delenn is still cocooned. General Haig comes online for her, and it's boom today. Commander Sinclair has been permanently reassigned off the station. Obviously a massive shock. It was a fair assumption that he was there for the duration, both for Ivanova and for us as viewers. There then comes a whole new title sequence that I'm not going to discuss, because strictly speaking, it has spoilers in it for future episodes. So, Sinclair is to be the first Earth ambassador on Minbar, the Minbari capital planet. The President has been looking for someone to do it, and the Minbari asked for him. Sheridan will be taking over. Ivanova served with him at the transfer point off Io, so she knows him. Lanier, elsewhere, is visited by a member of the Grey Council who is not impressed with Delenn's actions in undertaking her metamorphosis, and notes the presence of the Trigadi, telling Lanier to go to the humans when necessary with what he's been told. Meanwhile, Sheridan has arrived earlier than announced, and Ivanova races to meet him with a distinct lack of pomp and ceremony. She cedes control of the station to him and begins a tour. He's been on the rim for 2 years and has clearly missed fresh fruit. A Minbari with a beard, got to be warrior cast from his body size, arrives on the station and seems to be heading for Green Sector, the diplomatic quarters. Not sure we've actually seen facial hair on a Minbari so far. Sheridan's quarters appear bigger than Sinclair's were and have the benefit of an actual running water shower that Sheridan is very happy about, clearly unusual as water would be at a premium otherwise. Ivanova asks the awkward question, why him? He was Santiago's choice of replacement apparently, and he's used to working with the other major alien races, but the Minbari still call him Star Killer. Unlikely to be a popular choice with them, despite those events being 12 years distant. The crew, including Ivanova, are still struggling with Santiago's death. The Minbari warrior's name is Kalain, and the Satai from earlier spots him and follows after him. It becomes very apparent that they are not going to be best mates, with Kalain feeling the Grey Council has betrayed their race. He is reminded that Minbari do not harm Minbari and retorts that maybe they should start. He is clearly incensed by the Star Killer being in charge of Babylon 5 and Sinclair's presence on Minbar. He encourages the Satai to leave the station before cutting him loose. Ivanova drops by Medlab to check on Garibaldi. No change in his condition. Franklin notes that Garibaldi is agnostic when Ivanova says she'll pray for him, so she'll say half a prayer and hope that his body decides to heal itself. Sheridan now tries to give his lucky new posting speech in C&C. He begins by saying he met a new Dalai Lama aged 21 in Tibet as he was the son of a diplomat. He says that not understanding is the start of understanding, and is quoting Abraham Lincoln when he's interrupted by security linking in about a Minbari with information on station security. So his speech will have to wait. Kalain is in Green Sector and decks a guard when challenged. It's the Satai who's called Sheridan. Kalain was second in command of the Trigadi and hasn't been seen since the war. The Satai wants him apprehended so he can be taken back to Minbar. The Satai explains that Sinoval, one of the Minbari war leaders, suicided rather than obey the surrender order at the Battle of the Line and became a martyr to his crew. Kalain took over and the Trigadi went into exile. We learn that Sheridan knows enough about Minbari culture to call out the Satai over how someone allegedly from the Ministry of Culture can recognise a high-ranking warrior caste member 12 years on by sight. We then find out that Sheridan got his Starkiller nickname by destroying the Black Star, the Minbari flagship, costing the lives of many of the Minbari's finest warriors. They are clearly a long way from forgiving him for that, and are less than impressed that Sheridan got this position over their objections. Ivanova doesn't know how the Black Star was overcome. Sheridan explains that Minbari stealth tech prevented their weapons locking on during the war, so he mined the asteroids between Jupiter and Mars, of which there are many. A fusion bomb doesn't need a weapons lock. The Black Star went down with 3 heavy cruisers, something we see in the TV film in the beginning. Sheridan realises that Kalain's feeling of betrayal will extend to his people's representative on the station, Delenn. Lanier and Kalain are facing off as Sheridan and Ivanova arrive in her quarters with security to secure the situation. Sheridan and Lennier meet for the first time, but of course Delenn is indisposed. Sheridan interrogates Kalain, who is not forthcoming, about anything, including the location of the Trigadi. Lennier meets them as they leave the holding cell and says he has something he must tell them now, apologising if he was rude earlier. He is going to explain why the Minbari surrendered at the Battle of the Line. 3 years of war caused by an Earth Explorer division, almost over. We flash back to the Battle of the Line in Earth space. Earth forces continued to fight out of bravery or simple desperation, as the Satai Sheridan spoke with earlier put it. Lennier is quite matter-of-fact about just how close Earth was to utter defeat. We see in the flashback the tactical augmented reality view of the battle the Grey Council had at the time. Delenn says they should take a human on board to interrogate for intelligence on Earth's final defences, and the other Satai encourages her to hurry because she's running out of humans to pick. She picks Sinclair's Star Fury from the melee. Lennier explains that in scanning him, they were encountering a human for the first time and made a shocking discovery. He had a Minbari soul. Over the preceding generations, fewer Minbari had been born, and as they believed their souls passed from one generation to another, they had now found the explanation. Minbari souls being reborn, in whole or in part, in humans. Yet they could not tell their people or Earth, because to do so would cause immeasurable harm to their society. So the surrender was simply ordered. Sinclair's memory wiped, and he and the other test subjects that followed him returned, because Minbari do not harm Minbari. The secret must be kept, and Lennier has shared it in the expectation that Ivanova and Sheridan will also keep it. And then a Minbari warcruiser jumps in, and we see Warren Keffer watching a holographic letter from home in the pilot's ready room. The cruiser is coming in on the station with its gun ports open on an attack vector, targeting systems active. It looks older somehow than ones we've seen before. It's clearly the Trigadi. Pilots scramble to their fighters, and Kalain consumes the substance hidden in a tooth in his cell. Sheridan has a terse exchange of words with the elite of the war cruiser, who is demanding the release of Kalain. Sheridan realises that Kalain hasn't killed anyone, so why is the elite launching fighters and trying to pressure B5 into a response? She says all that remains is honour and death. Sheridan realises too late that Kalain is trying to make Babylon 5 the provocateur. He's already dead by the poison in his tooth. As fighter squadrons close, Sheridan realises that the station's scanners shouldn't be able to penetrate the Minbari fighters' stealth tech because they're the same type that were in use during the Minbari War, which means the Minbari want to be attacked. He orders the Furies to hold position and not engage as the Minbari fighters close in on them, whilst also telling Ivanova to send a tight beam transmission into hyperspace. She uses a comms laser to do this, not something we've seen the station do before. The Fury pilots are understandably nervous as the Minbari fighters close to 10 kilometres. Then they fly right by with no shots exchanged and loop back round towards their mothership to the amazement of the Fury pilots. But this was exactly what Sheridan had anticipated in realising they wanted to be targeted. Then a second Minbari cruiser jumps in, the one sent by the Minbari government to hunt the Trigadi. It had been waiting in hyperspace for a new sighting, and again Sheridan had intuited that from the fact that no one in real space had seen it, it must be waiting in hyperspace. His tight beam called it in. The Trigadi starts to withdraw, but Sheridan declines to intervene, leaving it to the new cruiser to effectively disable their engines. Ivanova notes it's a clean shot, no deaths, but the Trigadi then chooses to scuttle herself. Death before dishonour. They had wanted to die by human hands, because having been in exile for 12 years, Sheridan reasons they couldn't have gone home without dishonouring themselves. They needed a war, and hoped that Starkiller would give them one. They ran out of options. He thanks the new cruiser's elite, but is given short shrift, and they jump out. Sheridan is finally unpacking in his quarters, but is racked with doubt over whether his presence brought the Trigadi down on Babylon 5. Ivanova seeks to reassure him that there's enough guilt in the world without him pulling down more on himself. Apparently, President Clark knows about the reason for the surrender at the Battle of the Line, but doesn't necessarily believe it. However, he's happy enough that the Minbari do, which is why Sinclair, their first human contact, has gone to Minbar. Lanier talks to Delenn in her cocoon, but says they haven't told the Earth is everything, not about the coming darkness that will need both their races to counter it. Apparently we will learn about that soon enough. As he turns and leaves, the shell of the cocoon parts just a little and some clear liquid drips out. Kefir, Ivanova and Franklin are having a drink in a bar on a stalk I don't think we've seen before. Nice views out the windows, mind. Sheridan was due to join them, but Ivanova laughs as she realises he's trying to do his good luck speech at the worst possible time. No one's in CNC at this time of day. His speech from Abraham Lincoln speaks of a last best hope, and he makes it with 5 minutes to spare of his 24-hour deadline to give it. Okay, so, wow. So long since I saw this. I distinctly remember the overall plot, particularly the Minbari on Minbari space battle, which should basically never happen, of course. In fact, maybe they opened the jump point in part to force the other cruisers' hands so that they did die in some sort of battle. So let me rewind. Wow. So, we open on the Omega and its bridge, which is a new set. And already having just come from watching Season 1, the production, the picture quality seems to have jumped forward massively. The CGI is clearly improved, and we get this new Earth warship in the mix straight away, expanding what we know of Earth's fleet. Good classical name too. This, of course, is something of a catch-up episode, but it's also more than that, because actually what we get caught up on is far more than just what we knew before, because Lanier's exposition piece about why the Earth-Minbari War was stopped went beyond what we knew to this point, because of course Delenn was probably going to tell Sinclair this in Chrysalis, the last episode of Season 1, but events stopped Sinclair getting to her in time. Now we understand that Minbari do not kill Minbari, and that honour and pride are not uniquely human traits. We don't see anything of the Centauri this episode, because obviously the focus is on Sheridan, the Trigadi, and his history with the Minbari. So let's talk Sinclair. The first season revolved around his history with the Minbari, and now all of a sudden he's gone. Now, it took a long time for this to come out because he sadly passed away, but JMS has explained that over the course of Season 1, it became apparent that Michael O'Hare was struggling with his mental health badly. JMS undertook to help him and made sure he got treatment, but knew he couldn't continue and heal at the same time. So he activated one of the trapdoors he had built into the 5-year arc and brought Sheridan in early, effectively. The man is a genius. Bruce Boxleitner as Sheridan grated on me at first when I first watched the show. Another Tron alumni, like Peter Jurassic, of course. In fairness to him, I don't think it was his acting. It's just that I'd become accustomed to Sinclair's warrior monk character, while Sheridan is more than just plain warrior, and far less diplomatic as a result. I also didn't have the benefit of the reasoning behind this sudden shift in lead character at the time either, and you throw Kefir into the mix and you're left scratching your head as to what the heck happened to the show you thought you'd been watching. In case you're wondering, Kefir wasn't JMS's idea. The studio forced him to put an ace pilot into the mix. There are some episode previews on the disc I'm using, and my god, the one for this episode is very American gung-ho cringy, which of course Kefir's character fits right into. The fun thing is, despite this, JMS keeps focused on the arc. He always understood that the studio would throw certain curveballs in that actors and actresses might leave, so he rolled with that in order to tell the story. For as long as he possibly could, and he succeeded, ultimately. For all of these reasons, this is why a lot of people introduce people to Babylon 5 at Season 2. The cast will be largely stable from this point, the CGI is better and broader, and you don't go through the episodes that were largely there to establish the characters and set the stone rolling. Personally, I liked Season 1. I'll talk about it more in another video. But remember, aside from the gathering, no one had heard of Babylon 5's universe before, so Season 1 is fundamental to what I would loosely call the franchise. It sets up a lot of parameters and history that you cannot simply ignore if you value the show's arc. You'll have noticed that I'm not exactly reacting to this individual episode here. Probably fair, but essentially it does what it says on the tin. Point of departure for Commander Sinclair, very obviously, and point of departure for Sheridan leaving his ship to take command of Babylon 5. Beyond that, Garibaldi is still comatose, Jakar is still off the station. The resolution of the Minbari war surrender is very important, without doubt, as is the establishment of Sheridan as the Star Killer, because it does of course result in a warrior being in charge of a diplomatic station that is supposed to keep the peace. He is used to doing so by virtue of blowing stuff up. This is not in his comfort zone as a posting, and he will have to find his feet, just as we have to get used to him and how he's going to interact with characters we're already familiar with. So, lots of talking from me. Let's have some from you. Comments below, please. Thank you. I know these aren't your traditional reaction videos, and I half thought about trying to switch to a different approach after I move house, but truth is, I rather enjoy writing about the episodes and then writing these pieces, and ultimately, it's my channel, right? There's just so much you can say about each episode that I think I'd be doing JMS a disservice if I didn't at least try and be thorough about it. And if you happen to get intrigued and end up watching the series, then I figure I've passed the torch, and that'll do me. Plus, it just makes my son roll his eyes a lot at just how old and uncool his dad is, so that's a bonus. Okay, resting voice now. Catch you for the next one.